John, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Joseph. Thank you.
What led up to that fateful morning when Carmen lost her life?
Well, what actually happened, Carmen's very best friend, and her name was Carmen as well, and they'd gone through school together, started out at primary school, went right through secondary school together. In fact, they were nicknamed by the teachers pretty well known as the Terrible Twins because they had to separate them at times at school, but they were just fantastic together, and they were the best of friends, and they hadn't caught up with each other for about 4 months, so Carmen came out and stayed the night. And that morning, my eldest daughter, Michelle, got up to get ready to go to work. It was a Saturday morning, and she went down into the kitchen, and our Carmen was asleep at the kitchen table. She had her head in her arms and she was asleep, and Michelle said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "Well, I have to take Carmen into McDonald's." She was working part-time. She was still going to school, but she was working part-time at McDonald's. And Michelle said, "Oh, I'll take her in." And Carmen said, "Well, you don't have to be at work until 9, and Carmen has to be in there at 8, and I'm leaving in about 5 minutes, and you're not ready, Michelle." So anyway, Michelle waved them off and said to our Carmen, "Look, Carmen, wind the window down, turn the wireless up. You're tired, but you'll be right," and waved goodbye to them. And thankfully, Carmen had got into McDonald's and dropped her best friend off at work, and on the way home, our Carmen fell asleep at the wheel and hit a tree and was killed instantly. And my daughter Michelle actually used to give talks with me at the schools, but she now has 2 small children, and Michelle's part of the talk was very powerful. And I do relate this to the students because Michelle then got in her car and was on her way into work and came across Carmen's car accident, which, of course, poor old Michelle lives with the fact that she knew that Carmen was tired and she still let her drive and blames herself. We don't blame her, but it's something that Michelle lives with, and it was quite traumatic. And as Michelle pulled up at the tree, thankfully the police were already there, and the policeman grabbed Michelle and said, "Where do you think you're going?" And she said, "That's my sister in that car, and I'm going to take her home." And the policeman said, "You can't go over there." And Michelle said, "It's my sister, and I am going to take her home." And with that, the policeman just said, "You're not going anywhere, young lady." And Michelle said, "Is Carmen all right?" And the policeman hesitated. Unfortunately for him, he was only a young fellow, 22 years old. So Michelle punched him in the face. The emotions just really took over, and he said, "Look, I'm sorry, Michelle, but your sister is dead." And he said, "I'll need you to identify her licence and identify her wallet." Michelle said, "Can I at least go over and hold her hand?" And he wouldn't let her do that. And Michelle was put in the police car, and unfortunately she was opposite the passenger side of the car, and the doors had all sprung open and she could see inside and see Carmen under the sheet. She then identified the wallet, and she was beside herself, of course, and she said to the policeman, "We'll have to go home to Mum and Dad because they're on their way in to Bendigo," because we were actually fundraising for the Spastic Society of Victoria at the time, and we were doing a tin shake in town. And the next thing, we were just about to get into the car, and a police car drove in the driveway, and I went over and I said, "Can I help you?" The young policeman got out and he said, "There's been a serious car accident." And I said, "Is Michelle all right?" And he said, "It's not Michelle, it's Carmen, and I'm afraid she's gone." And I said, "Where's she gone to?" And he said, "It's Carmen and she's gone." I said, "No, Carmen's in bed." I didn't even know she'd got up and taken her friend into work. And the next thing, Michelle jumped out of the back seat of the car and said, "Dad, Carmen's dead." So it was pretty traumatic, I can tell you. Yeah, so and I'm now working as hard as I can to try and get into as many secondary colleges as I can, to speak to these kids, to let them know, particularly the fact that fatigue can strike at 8 o'clock in the morning or 8 o'clock at night or midnight. And they say that 33% of car accidents can be attributed to fatigue, and I feel that it could be more. And I defy any driver who's been driving for a fair while to tell me that they've never driven while they're tired. I believe every driver drives while they're tired.
I think we've all been guilty of that in the
Absolutely.
past, particularly on long drives.
Absolutely.
It's a big decision to take, to decide you're going to speak about a personal story like this in schools, even with the best of intentions. How long did it take you to work through what must have been the most difficult of things to be able to come to that point where you were able to even make a decision like this?
Well, what actually happened, it was 2 years after we lost Carmen, and I was living in Bendigo at the time. We're now in Ballarat, but 3 Catholic College students were out in their car, and a Kangaroo Flat student were out in a car, and they were on a back road, and they were doing donuts on a dirt road. The driver was getting his licence on the Monday, and this was on a Friday night. And what happened, the car flipped onto its side. None of them had a licence, flipped onto its side and slid into a tree. And the roof of the car jammed all the doors shut. None of the boys were injured, but the car caught on fire and they were all burnt to death. And they were all 16 and 17 years old. And I just said, that was the catalyst. I said, I have to do something about this. I've got a story to tell, and I have to try and stop these kids from killing themselves. Because, do you know, one of the things that's happened, they used to say car accident, and it is not a car accident, it's a car crash. And people die in car crashes, and in particular on country roads, they say country road drivers die on country roads, and we do. And we have to be more vigilant. I'm bringing Carmen's story to the schools, and, you know, when I walk out of that school, none of these kids will know who I am, but they will all remember Carmen. And one of the things that I'm really grateful for is that I actually talk at schools, and I talk for an hour about my daughter Carmen. And I'm the lucky one in our family, because Carmen's still in my life for an hour when I talk to these kids, and I can see the look in their eyes. They understand what we're going through, and I will tell the kids straight. I'll say, don't you dare do this to your parents and to your brothers and sisters, and don't do it to your friends. Don't go out there and kill yourself in a car crash. And it was Carmen's first car accident, and she's dead. And I know people who've had 10 car accidents, and they're still walking around, and good luck.
I've thought the same thing about driving, because a lot of us just learn what cars and roads can and can't handle, and we have scrapes and bingles, and hopefully they're not major ones, but sometimes, obviously, they are. What do the children, what do the students say to you, and what do you think the response is from your talk and relating this whole story to them? Yes,
I speak for 50 minutes, and in the 13 years that I've been talking, there has never been one question asked during my talk, and you can hear a pin drop. But afterwards, I spend half an hour at the school, and a lot of students come up and they speak to me one-on-one. And even the teachers don't know what's happened in these kids' lives in the past that have affected them, and a lot of the kids really open up to me. But when I'm giving the talk, I can see it in their eyes. The kids are taking it all in. And my talk is about family. It's not about whether you should drink or drive, or whether you should take drugs or drive, or whether you should speed or do anything wrong on the roads. Carmen wasn't doing anything wrong. She was helping out a friend taking her to work that morning. And it can happen to anybody at any time. The fact is, you just have to really be vigilant, and you have to respect your motor vehicle, you have to respect the roads, you have to respect other road users, and just do everything possible that you possibly can to look after your own life. Because when Carmen was killed in the car crash, that was the end for Carmen. And I get very angry about the fact that Carmen should die at age 18 when her life was really just starting. Sometimes I just get really sad about it, but often I get really angry that her life should be taken from her like that. And I'm asking the kids, don't put your parents and brothers and sisters and friends into this situation, because we have to live with it. My mum gave me some wonderful advice in her life. But one of the things that Mum said to me was wrong. She said to me, time heals everything. 13 or 14 years down the track, I can tell you that it hasn't healed my loss for Carmen. It hasn't healed our family's loss, and will never heal, because my 18-year-old youngest daughter is dead, and I can't give her a cuddle, I can't tell her I love her, and I can't talk to her. And you can't turn back the clock. It just took one split second when Carmen went to sleep at the wheel, and our lives have been shattered, and they're shattered forever.
It sounds as though in some ways it's cathartic for you to be able to speak about Carmen to students. Is it difficult as well, though? Are you all the time going over an open wound?
Do you know, it's a really good question, because it must be the way you feel within yourself. Sometimes I can be there and talking to students, and I can go through it very well. In fact, not have an emotional response, just giving the message. Other times I can get really emotional, and it can just get to me for some reason. Maybe it's Carmen feels close to me, and I feel the loss more. And it is hard. It's really hard to go through it over and over again. My eldest daughter, Michelle, she gave the talks with me for 3 years. She now has 2 school-aged children, so she can't give the talks anymore with me. And, it's a good thing, because Michelle was never able to give the presentation at a school without crying. Because, as I said, she really feels very much partly responsible for the fact that she let Carmen drive while she was tired. And one of the messages that I get across to the kids really strongly is that you must make choices. We all make choices every day in our lives. And peer pressure is a horrible thing. And kids are often feel compelled to get in a car with someone, and I give them the means of being able to say, look, you're a really good mate of mine, but I don't think you should be driving. And do you know what? I don't want to go to your funeral. That's how much I think of you. Please don't drive. It gives them a choice. They must make choices.
What do you think has been the key to helping you and your family move beyond Carmen's loss and not to be destroyed by it?
It was hard work. We had to put some things in. We had to actually put some things in place that we knew we were putting in place to try and help us cope. I've heard of so many marriages that have broken up over things like this. For example, the night that Carmen was killed, I'm laying in bed with Ange, and we both had sleeping tablets, and Ange is just sobbing herself to sleep, and I'm crying as well. The next morning you wake up, and the nightmare is it's real. And what we did, and we had to do it for our children as well, we had to put things in place where we could have steps, and they were small steps that we needed to. Michelle wouldn't go out, for example, in town. She lost most of her friends because they didn't know what to say to Michelle. So we sent them overseas on a trip, actually, for 3 months, and it was terrible because not only had we lost Carmen, we lost our other 3 daughters for 3 months as well. But it's a hard thing to answer. I think that a lot of people would put a lot of different things in place, but you have to put processes in place. Work is a good thing. That helps you to get over it. Having really good friends helps you to get over it. Being a really close family like we are, and our extended family, that was an enormous plus. We had great support.
What more do you think, finally, John, what more do you think needs to be done to make sure young people aren't overrepresented in road accidents?
I think it's happening right now. When my 4 daughters were at school, not one word of road safety. They didn't hear one word on road safety. And I really think that if Carmen had heard that, even though she'd only been driving for 3 months, she might have been aware that she was actually going to sleep at the wheel, and it might have saved her life. I just give great credit now to the schools, because there's no point in having the best education to an 18-year-old who's been killed in a car crash. That education is worth absolutely nothing to them when they're dead. It's a hard thing to say, but it's absolutely true. And that's what happened with Carmen. She had a great education. Now what's happening is that the teachers and the schools, they're actually paying me to come and talk to these students, and I think that's a great thing for them to be doing, because the kids are being educated as to what to expect and what to do and what dangers there are out there on the roads. It's only one thing, like there's suicide, there's lots of different things that are out there to really affect our kids, but this is one area, and let's take this one small step because it really works.
Good luck, John. Thank you very much for sharing your story with us this morning.
Thank you.